Hi there, my name is Jake Miller, and one of the most common questions that I receive on Twitter or at conferences or via email or anything like that is, how do you make your edu GIFs or your GIFs that you post? What software are you using for those GIFs? I've gotten this question so many times that I have a response on my phone. When I type in the words use Camtasia together and hit space, it puts in text that says, I use Camtasia to make all my GIFs and screencasts. If I were stranded on a weird desert island that had Wi-Fi, the two software programs that I would need would be Google Chrome and Camtasia. I use it that much. And yeah, Camtasia is what I use for doing these different GIFs. It's also what I use for the videos that I make too. It is my favorite video editing program out there. Full disclosure, I am an affiliate for Camtasia, which means if you choose to buy Camtasia to use and you use this link of mine that's on the screen here, which is jakemiller.net/TS, as in TechSmith, which is the company that makes Camtasia. Again, jakemiller.net/TS. It won't change the amount you pay, but I will get a little bit back from TechSmith as the person that referred you for using Camtasia. So let's talk about how I make GIFs in Camtasia. So here on my screen, you can see Camtasia is open and ready to go. I've actually already recorded this video here to cut down the length of how much I have to show you, but I'll walk you through it first here. So first step in Camtasia is going to be record your actual screencast. So once you have your file up and open and ready to go, you're going to click record in the top right corner, and you're going to see four options here. Number one, what part of your screen do you want to record, along with this button that says I do want to record it or I don't. What camera do you want to record, along with a button to turn it on or off. What audio do you want to record, along with a button to turn it on or off. And do you want to record system audio or not. In this situation for a GIF, I don't want my webcam on and I don't want audio on. I just want my screen on. Okay, so I have just the first one to my screen. Now, if you click that drop-down arrow, you could choose how much of your screen you want to record. I often cut it down to a smaller area of my screen, maybe make the window a little bit smaller and kind of record just that small window, because for a GIF, I want it to be really easy for the viewer to focus in on the content. In this particular example, I'm recording my entire screen. You can see it says built-in Retina display. I have taken to doing this recently because I also repurpose these GIFs as YouTube videos, and so I want the full screen video for YouTube. But you have that option of doing just a portion of your screen, maybe to focus your viewer's attention to a certain area. So once you click start recording, you'll get a 3-second countdown, and you could start from there. One important note while you're recording is you'll see an icon come up at the top of your screen. Depending, by the way, I'm on Mac here, but depending on what kind of device you're on, you'll see an icon that shows that you're recording, and you'll also be able to use it to pause your recording or stop your recording. Now, personally, I use a keyboard shortcut to pause or stop recording. That way there's not that awkward time at the end where I'm looking for the button. I just quickly click it, and then it doesn't need to be edited out of the video or GIF necessarily. And that keyboard shortcut that pauses or stops is Shift Command 2. I'm not sure what it is on a PC, but I bet it's similar to Shift Command 2. It might be Shift Control 2. That automatically pauses me, and then if I'm ready to stop, I just click the stop button then. Well, it's no longer recording me. Okay, so that was step one, recording the screencast. Make sure your audio and your webcam is off. Decide if you want to zoom in certain dimensions and use that keyboard shortcut to stop recording. Okay, now for step two. So in step two, we're going to start adding our cursor effects. So now you see in Camtasia right here, I've got my recorded screencast right here. It's also automatically put it down here in the timeline. You might have to drag it down and put it in place, but typically it puts it right in there for you, so it's all ready to go. Okay, now I like to start off by adding my cursor effects before I make any changes to the video. That way I don't have to make it to separate areas. I put it in all of them. So I go to cursor effects here on the left, and I generally use all three of these. Okay, I use a cursor highlight, which is this yellow one here. Now I have my own saved here, which says this blue cursor highlight. So let's drag that one down in. You literally just drag it down onto the file and drop it. Or if you have the file selected, you could right click on it and say add to, let's click on this magnify one, add to selected media, and it'll add it that way. So either of those works. I used to use the yellow one and then go into it and change the coloring and the size and things like that, but now I know what I like it to look like. I like it to be this blue color. I like it to be that size. I like it to be this opacity. So you can change those things, and then if you want to, you could save yours into your library. So you can see over here, mine is this bluish color. I like mine to be size 30. I think think it starts off as size 50. It's like a little bit smaller. I changed the opacity to 60, but you could pick based on what works best for you. You also have the option of having it be a magnify circle as you move about, or a spotlight circle, or different colored highlights too. Okay, and you can see if you hover over things, it shows a preview of what those look like. The next thing I do under cursor effects is add an effect for left clicking. I prefer the left click ripple. Okay, which is the same as this ripple down here, but this is my saved version of it. I've changed the timing of how it works, but you can just grab ripple and drag it down onto your clip and put it in there, and then you can modify here in properties the ripple's radius and intensity and duration. And these settings that you see here, 75.3 and 0.3, are what I prefer. The default ones are a little bit different from that, but these are just the ones that I found work best for me. The default ones certainly work fine too. And then under right click, I also like to add a right click effect, even though I don't tend to right click very often in my videos. But under right click, I have, again, customized what I like to happen for a right click. But when you drag it in, you'll see it pop up on your properties here. I've changed it from being yellow to being the orange that I normally use in my videos. I've changed the size and the duration a little bit too. So you can go in and modify those ones and see what look right to you. But if I hover over the rings option here, I'll see what the regular one looks like. I think I sped mine up a little bit as well as changing that color there. So you can hover over them and see what they look like. I also like the warp button. I think it's really cool. I kind of find it to be a little bit distracting in a GIF though. But certainly whatever format you feel works best for you. So that's step 2, adding those cursor effects and customizing them the way you want them to be. Now for step 3. Step 3 is trimming and cutting your video as needed. Now, if you're trying to make a GIF here, you need it to be short, preferably under 40 seconds, definitely under a minute. I mean, technically you can go over a minute, but nobody wants to watch a silent GIF that goes more than a minute. At least I don't. I used to aim for 20 seconds, but with some of the processes I do, that's just not realistic. So I tend to aim for under 40. I don't mind if it goes over 40, if it's what's best for the viewing experience, but I aim for under 40 at best, and preferably under 30. So the first step to help me get there is going to be to look at my video and decide if there's anything I want to cut out of it. Now, while you watch, you'll find out why you want to do this, because it takes a long time to watch through this, a relatively long time, because you already know what it looks like. So you're here watching something that maybe doesn't matter to you, and you're looking for anything that you could potentially cut out of this video. Anytime where there's something that was unnecessary, there were long pauses, or maybe where you stopped to try to figure out what you're going to do next, or maybe you accidentally clicked something you didn't want to click, because we want a GIF to be as clear and concise as possible. We don't want to waste any time for our viewers. We want to make sure it's all well-used time here. Okay, so this scroll that I did here, I don't like that scroll I did there, so I'm going to take that scroll out. I thought I'd be able to scroll down and see the grades changing to green, but I couldn't. So I am going to use this red arrow here and pull my video out until I come back up. I'm just going to get it right when it clicks over to that. Okay, and I'm going to ripple delete this out. So right click and ripple delete range. What ripple delete range does is it pulls them together. So anytime I could pull them together and keep them as one track at the same time, or one piece of audio, one piece of media, is helpful. And there I just cut 4 seconds out of my GIF there. That's nice that I was able to do that. So then I'll go back before that cut and rewatch green, 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 and then poof back to there. There we go, that worked good. Then I come here to this screen. And actually, I don't like that I had to click over to grades, so I'm going to make it go automatically there. So I'll do the same thing. This time I'm going to grab the green to pick where the beginning goes and have it fade in on that green screen there. Right there. So ripple delete. Okay, go back a little bit and watch. Okay, and there are their grades in there automatically. That looks perfect. Okay, sometimes I have to edit a little bit off the beginning, sometimes I have to edit a little bit off the end, but I feel like this was pretty good the way this worked here. But now I've cut out all unnecessary parts. Sometimes there's some long pauses in places and things like that, and normally I'll leave those in until I've sped up the video and decided what I want to do with it next. Okay. One note, I'm going to have to go back to this and add actual blurring into this GIF. You see it now in the YouTube video, but I'll have to add blurring into the GIF to cover up these names. We'll get to that in a couple minutes. That was step 3, trimming and cutting the video as needed. Now for step 4, which is modifying clip speed. The easiest way for me to do that is I just right click on it, and right there is add clip speed. It's also available on the left menu here, I think under video effects, or visual effects maybe, there's a clip speed in there, but this is the one that I normally use, just right clicking on it. And now you see within the video there's the right click rings, the left click ripple, the cursor highlight, and clip speed, and you can see it's currently set to 1. Okay, so I'm going to click on the video again over in my properties menu, which you can turn on and off with this green button here. I see clip speed down at the bottom. It's currently set to 1, and it's currently 1 minute 26 seconds and 29 frames long. Okay, that's too long. That's longer than I want my GIF to be. Now, that's just for this piece of media. If you have separate pieces of media, you'll have to edit them individually or shift click on them to edit them all together. Okay, you have a choice. You could either change the speed and it'll change the duration, or you can change the duration and it'll change the speed for you. I tend to change the duration because I know what duration I have in mind. I don't really care too much about what the speed is as long as it looks good and works well for that duration. So I'm going to change it to 40 seconds because that's kind of my max that I want it to be at, and then I'll see if I could speed or slow things down or speed things up from there too. So let's say I change my minutes to 0. And I change my seconds to 40 and my frames to 0. Now it's changed that video. If I look at it, it's now 40 seconds long. It is at 2.17 times speed. Now, for different parts of the video, I might change that up. So sometimes you want some parts of the video to be faster than others. And there is a part like that. So for example, I'm going to zoom in on my timeline here a little bit. Get that a little bit closer. There's a point where I type, and here it is right here. I jumped right to it. So at this point, I type. Well, let's watch. I'm at 15 seconds. And I typed for an entire 5 seconds or more, almost 6 seconds there. I did that intentionally so I could edit that here. But I don't want my GIF to have 5 or 6 seconds of me typing. So I'm going to cut the video right when I start typing, so right here. And the keyboard shortcut, by the way, is Control or Command T. Okay, now it's cut. And I'm going to jump to the end of it right when I stop typing. Go a little bit before that so I get me clicking the button clearly, and Command T there again. And I want this chunk of the video to be faster. Okay, so now I'm going to click on it, and let's say I go 5 times speed. Okay, and you see how that moved it to much smaller there, and now I could bump this piece of the video over. Okay, and that made my entire video 36 seconds and 23 frames instead of 40 seconds. So I saved almost 4 seconds by doing that. Okay, and I might find other places in the video where I'm going to do that too. Now, I might decide, you know what, now I want to slow this down a little bit so that it, you know, since I saved some time there, I might save that time, you know, add some slowness to this other part of the video here. If I do that, one note, I cannot reduce the speed of this because there's not room for it to go any slower. So I could change this to 1 speed if I want to, and hit enter. It's not going to do it because there's something at the end of it. However, if I move this stuff down, then I can make this slower. A little trick, by the way, sometimes I will get this to where I want it to start. And for this, if I want to just go until then, I might just make it 1 speed. It's not going to work. But watch, it's going to go from 2.17 to 1.72. So it made it as slow as it could based on that setting there. Now, I actually don't want to change that speed, so I'm going to click undo a couple times to get back to where I was. But that's a little hack to help me get there. Okay, so that's step 4, modifying the clip speed. Now, it might not be perfect yet. I'll mess with that as I watch, and I'll pay attention to if some parts of it look too slow or too fast. Okay, next up is cropping and custom animations. So step 5, cropping the video and adding in any custom animations into the video. Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning of the video. And if I look, by the way, at my video, I've got a little bit of black space at the bottom and a little bit of black space at the top. So I might want to crop my video to fit that space. I am instead going to right click, and I'm going to go to project settings, and I'm going to change it to fit the visible screen and click apply. Now it fits exactly to what that video was there. But you can make your dimensions whatever you want them to be. If I want to, I can crop out the address bar up at the top, which I think I will. I'm going to click the crop button. I'm going to pull this down. And I could use my click wheel to move in. I can hold down space to move it up as well. Oop. Yeah. Hold down space to zoom in a little bit to get down into the white. So now I've cropped it to where just that part's available. And again, using the space key lets me move the frame I'm working in up and down. Okay. Now I'm going to click back onto the cursor, get it back into the center of my grid there. Those yellow lines pop up. And then I might change my screen back to normal. I'm instead going to make my background white. So I'm going to go to project settings and go to white background here. And now it just kind of blends in. I think that looks nicer that way. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to have my GIF work here. Okay, so now I have cropped it, but now I want to add some custom animations. In other words, are there certain places that I want to zoom in on? Okay, so let's watch. Okay, so I click into the video. I click on number of answers to grade. You know what? I should probably zoom in on that answers to grade part. So right here, I'm going to go to animations. I'm going to go to custom. I'm going to drag it down into my grid. I might even zoom in on that. I find the animation durations to be a little bit too short, too fast. So I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. Okay. And then you want to click on make sure it's selected in yellow, make sure you're at the end of it, and then modify your video on the screen, your media, to match what you want it to look like at the end of that custom animation. So I literally just want to zoom in on that area. So I'm just going to bring it in like this. I'll put Rick nice and large up here in the corner and get it to right there. And I'll go back before the animation and watch it go. That looked good. Okay, so it got into me in time for me to click on that spot. Now, I want it back out. So now I'll either use a custom to come back out to normal, or maybe I'll use restore to go back to where it was. So let's see, I want the restore to start right when I click on it. And I'll go back to here. So let's watch how that looks. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so now I'm going to start doing some grading over on the right. So I'm going to zoom in on the right area over here. So I'm going to put in a custom animation, stretch it out a little bit longer, and I'm going to pull this out to let me focus in on this area that I'm grading at here. Notice that I can have my stuff go off the screen if I want to. It just won't show up in the final GIF. I could crop that part out if I want to, but if it's out in the black, it doesn't matter. So let's look at how that looks now. I actually don't like how I can't see that I'm changing from one question to another, so I'm going to actually make that go in, stay in a little bit further. Okay, let's see how that looks now. Okay, now at the end here is when I type in a comment to a student. That's the part that I typed in faster there. So I need to get to the point where I could see what they're typing in the comment. So as I'm coming to click on the comment box, I needed to zoom over to where I'm typing. I'm going to make it a pretty quick zoom. I'm just going to have it move over to right here. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay, I think that looks pretty good like that there. Now the problem is, you notice between these two clips that the size changes because I've changed the properties of one but not of the other. So what I do is I get inside of the one that's the way I want it, I right click and I click copy properties, and then I go to the one that I want to match it and I right click on it and click paste properties, and then it'll match. Okay, so now let's go ahead and watch. Okay, now this one needs to be like that too. So paste properties. Okay, now I'm going to close that, and so I'm going to need to add a custom animation here to change my view here too. Okay, so now I'm going to actually restore here. Restore won't work because restore gets it back to where that clip was at the beginning of the clip or before the most recent animation. There's no animation in that clip, so I've actually got to use custom here. Now, that scroll took me a long time right there. So I might speed up that scroll, but actually I'm going to have a text box pop up over this with some instructions. So I think I'm happy with the scroll the way it is. So I'm actually going to leave it that way. But I could speed up that scroll area by cutting that clip and then changing the clip speed of that part there. But here I'm going to leave it. Okay, now I'm coming back to the top. This is kind of a key moment. I'm going to click on that button. So I want, at the time I click on that button, I want to be zoomed into it. So I'm going to add a custom animation here. I'm going to make it take a little bit longer to get there, and I'm going to zoom into that spot right there. Okay, and that's kind of a key moment right there when I click on that. And then as soon as I click on it, I want to see everything else. So I'm going to click restore. Actually, I'm not going to restore. I'm going to go back to full. I'm going to go custom. By the way, when I typically edit, I typically do this with the editor area here. I right click, click detach canvas, and put it on a different monitor. Here I'm putting it in, keeping it in here so that you can see both things at once in this video. But typically I would have this on a separate monitor so I could see it full screen. Makes the editing a lot easier this way. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch. Okay, that looks good. So that was step 5, cropping and custom animations. Now the next part is the important part because now I need to communicate to my viewer what's happening here, and that's step 6, which is adding in annotations and pauses. This is when we're helping our viewer understand what's happening, because if we're making an edu GIF or a regular GIF, if you want to call it that, there's no audio for us to explain things with. So we're going to explain things using animations, and we're going to have to add in pauses here and there to give the viewer time to read the things in the annotations. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning of my video. Start at the very beginning. I'm going to hit the space bar to watch. And you know what? Actually, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in an annotation to show what we're talking about here. So annotations are right here. And most of the ones we want are these callouts at the front. They all work pretty much the same. I have my own one saved here under library, so I'm going to use one of those, but they function the same way as the ones here in annotations. So I'm going to click on library. I'm going to grab what I call callout 1. I'll put it where I want it to be on the screen. Okay, now you'll see with this call out that I have 4 things over here in the call out area here. I have modifying the video elements of the call out itself, the physical elements, modifying the text of the call out, modifying the shape of the call out, and finally is modifying the behaviors of the call out. And you can access these behaviors in this behavior menu over here on the left, but I like to have mine drift in, bounce during, and drift out. Okay, so it's already got those settings set up with it, but if you need them, you get them underneath that behaviors menu. So at first we could see the dots for where it is because it's not there yet. That's the location it's going to be at. So I'll click play and watch where it is there. Okay, so now I'm going to pause. I'm going to double click in my call out, make sure I've selected all the text. Sometimes I just Control A to get all the text, replace it with what I want. I'm going to say let's look at the ways that we can efficiently give feedback in Edpuzzle. Okay, and now I'm going to watch that swoop in and make sure it looks good. I always like to make sure that I can read it as if I was the viewer. Let's look at the ways that we can efficiently give feedback in Edpuzzle. Okay, it was pretty fast there at the end, so I'm going to pull it out a little bit further before it swoops away. Let's look at the ways that we can efficiently give feedback in Edpuzzle. Okay, I would go even a little bit further, but that's pretty good. Now, another thing I like to do is make sure that my video doesn't start doing things that's going to take the viewer's attention while they're trying to read. So I'm going to look at where I stopped reading, and at that point, that's when I want the movement of the video to start. So I'm going to click play. Let's look at the ways that we can efficiently give feedback in Edpuzzle. Okay, so right there is where I want the video to really be starting some kind of movement. So I'm going to drag this over. Actually, I'm going to drag everything in this row over because I got to drag them together. So I'm going to shift click on all these, and I'm going to pull them over so that that part's right there. Yeah, because this part's all static here. Now, that means here at the beginning, I've just got a white screen. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to click on this piece of media here in the timeline. I'm going to hold down the Option key on my Mac. I'm guessing it's Alt on a PC, and I'm going to drag it to the beginning. What that does is that freezes that first frame. So it's just like a picture that's static during that whole time. So let's check out what it looks like. So I'm going to click spacebar to click play. Let's look at the ways that we can efficiently give feedback in Edpuzzle. And now it starts moving. That's perfect. I had time to read it. So now let's watch and let's see when the next time I need to tell the viewer something is. Okay, so I clicked on 29 answers to grade. So I'm going to put a circle around that. So another annotation we have in here are these sketch motion animations. I like this oval one down here. I have my own in my library here that I've saved to be a certain color that I like and a certain thickness that I like and a certain pace that I like and everything like that. So I'm going to grab it and drag it out here. And again, we see where it's at, but we don't see it yet because it gets drawn on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to click play. Okay, looks good. It was in the right spot, but it played too soon. So I need that to come a little bit earlier. So let's see. Okay, and now I want it to go away at that point. So I'm going to drag this in here, drag the end in so it starts to fade out at that point. So let's check out how that looks. Okay, that looked pretty good. It brought me into got me into the grading screen there. Now, I do feel like it was hard to see what was being circled there. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll come down here and I will actually cut the video at the point that I want it to stay a little bit longer. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click Control T to cut. Command T on my Mac actually. I'm going to move everything to the right of that space over about a second or so, just a little bit. And I'm going to zoom in there, and I'm going to drag this frame. Remember, I hold down Option and drag, and that's going to freeze that on my screen a little bit longer. Let's see how the oval looks now. That looked really good. I could tell what was happening there. I'm really happy with how that looks. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and show the 3 ways to grade. It zooms in over here. So one way is this check mark over there. Okay, so right about here, I'm going to tell them we're going to use the check mark at this point. So I want to use an arrow here to do that. Again, inside of Annotations, in the callouts, there's an arrow right there. I could change styles and pick a different style. I have my own personal arrow that I like to use under Library. I'll use arrow 2 here since I used the blue before. So I'll drag it into where I want it to be. Again, it shows the box, but it doesn't show it because it's got to come onto the screen. So let's play it so it goes on. Okay, so I want it to point right to there. So I'll say one option is to mark things correct or incorrect using the check mark or X. Okay, got a typo in there. Okay, I'm gonna make that text a little bit bigger there. Okay, now again, I want to make sure that the viewer has time to read this before things start happening. So let's see, actually, it could probably start way back here. One option is to mark things correct or incorrect using the check mark or the X. I think that actually worked out okay because I clicked it a few times in there. It just went away too soon. So let's drag it out and see how that looks. One option is to mark things correct or incorrect using the check mark or the X. I think that looked okay. Okay. Now, there was me doing the second thing. The second thing was me typing in a score. Okay, so right here, I want to draw their attention to me typing in a score. So let's pull this back a little bit. I'm going to bring in another arrow and have it go right to there. Let's see. Okay, have it come in a little bit sooner so that it lines up with me doing it. And I'm going to say another option is typing in a numerical value. Again, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so it's easier to read on screen. Maybe I'm going to point this one up so it's coming from the center. Okay, let's check it out. I'm going to go back to before that animation actually. One option is to mark things correct or incorrect using the check mark or X. Another option is typing in a numerical value. Okay, so now I'm switching over to commenting. So let's pull this out a little bit. Let's see how that looked with the check mark again, or the number value. Another option is typing in a numerical value. Okay, that was good. Okay, so I'm going to get that off the screen a little bit sooner so that now I can bring in something about the comment. Okay, so I'm going to bring in a different arrow and have it point right to there. So let's check it out. Whoa, that's big. Okay, let's make that arrow a little bit smaller. Okay, make that text a little bit smaller so it matches the rest of it. Now, I clicked on the comment button so fast there that we couldn't even see it happen. So this again is a time where I'm going to add in a pause. So right here, as I switch down to the comments, I want it to freeze on that screen for a second. So I'm going to click right here. I'm going to click Control T or Command T on my Mac to cut it. I'm going to come over here to the end. I'm going to move everything on this track forward by about a second, and I'll watch the total time. See, it's at 38:19. Let's go to a little bit past 39. That should be good. And then I'm going to hold down Option on a Mac or probably Alt on a PC, drag it out to freeze that frame. Let's see how it looks now. Okay, that froze there for long enough, but I think the comment part came in too slowly here now, so let's check it out. I'd actually like this, instead of being an arrow, I'd like this to be a regular text box here. So I'm going to go back to a square here and put this regular. Okay, that all looked good. Nothing I need to give bring the viewer's attention to there. So now I'm going to click play again, and now see me scrolling. The reason I'm scrolling here is because I want to show them another strategy I use is to read down through all the answers, identify the correct answers, and then I go back and mark them as correct afterwards. So I'm going to put right here. I'm going to pull the comment box out a little bit further, leave that on screen a little bit further. Let's put in a call out here, and I'm going to say, one time saving hack is to scroll through and leave the correct answers there. Okay, let's see. Actually, I want that to stay on screen even longer there. Okay, and here's what I do is I mark everything that was correct as ungraded. So I'm going to bring in another call out that comes right here, right below it, as if it's a continuation of it. Okay, and I want this to be like right up against that one, almost like it's a continuation of it. Actually, if I put it, put it down a little bit lower. Okay, and I use the arrow keys, make it go lower. Let's see how that looks. One time saving hack is to scroll through and leave the correct answers there, and then mark them all as correct. Let's have that come in a little bit sooner. And I want to point to what I'm doing there. So I'm going to get this sketch arrow here that is a curved arrow. I love these sketch arrows, these sketch shapes. So I have one saved in the library here. Let's see, sketch. Here's a curved sketch arrow. Here's one I use. So I'll bring it over here. Let's see, and I want to bring it in like right as soon as that comes into position. I want my arrow to go like that. I'm going to tilt it and change the size of it. Have it go to right there. Let's see how that looks. Okay, perfect. I just need those text boxes to stay a little bit longer. I want the arrow to go away a little bit sooner. Let's see how that part looks now. One time saving hack is to scroll through and leave the correct answers there, ... and then mark them all as correct. Now, let's say to close it out, now everything's graded. Okay, looks great. I'm going to pull this in to end there. Okay, so my annotations I think look really good here. Let's watch to the end, see if there's anything else I have to note. That's the end of the video. So I'm done with my annotations. Now the other annotation I need to add here is blurring effects. Now it's blurred here in the YouTube video you're watching, but on my screen in the GIF, I could see students' names here. So anytime I want to blur out students' names, let's get to the first part. Okay, there's some students' names there. So I want to go into my annotations and go over to this thing that looks like a water droplet, blur and highlight. Here is the one that is blurring right here. You see it's blurring the center. Drag it on screen, cover the area you want blurred. Okay, this is the amount of time it'll be on the screen, so I need to go back to when the names first appeared. Sometimes I'll use this tool to go frame by frame. So here's where they first appear, and then I'm gonna go frame by frame through it. Oh, did I show a name at the top there temporarily? I did. Okay, there went the names there. So I'm going to end that blur at that point, and I'm going to add a blur now as I get to the new names over here. So here are those names. Okay, now I can cut that blur out of there because I'm not showing anything with it. Still no names showing, so I don't need any more blurring yet. Now here I'm going to now I can see just first names, so I'm not worried about seeing those first names there because it's not full names. Although actually I might as well just blur them out just to be safe. So here's where they appear. I'm going to get the blur again. Have it go right here at the edge. Nice and skinny down to the bottom here. Click play. Okay, now the blur needs to come out to right about there. So it looks like the blur can actually go to right here. Let's see if... Yep, that looks good. And then here at the end, I'm going to have to put in another blur. I'm going to go back. There's all the names again. So now I got to find the beginning of that spot. Just right about there. Now the last thing I want to show you with that blur is I can make the blur move. So at this point, the blur goes right over this area here, but then as I move forward, I scroll, and the blur needs to cover those names up there. So I'm going to find the end of that scroll. There it was right there. And I'm going to go to my blur, and I'm going to add a custom animation onto it. Zoom in a little bit here. I want it to go, oops, undo. I want it to go right to where the scroll ended, which was right there. And I want to make sure the start of it is right where the blur started. Or right where the scroll started. So there's where the scroll started. And at the end, click on the end and resize it so it goes up to there, and it'll custom animation to go over that. So let's check it out. Yeah, pretty well covered them, but then I scrolled up and down. So let's actually have it just go all the way up to here at that point. Maybe I need to have it come in sooner. So I just need to determine when do I want it to get up all the way up there. There we go. That kept them all close, covered there. And then if I want to here at the end, I could have the blur go back down towards the bottom. So at this point here, by the way, sometimes when you put an animation in there, it won't go into the right spot that you want it in. So what I'll do is I'll just put it in whatever spot it accepts and then move it over to the spot that I need it to be in. Okay, perfect. So that was step 6, which is adding in annotations and pauses. I don't very often have to add in blurs, but just in case, I wanted to show you how to do that too. That was step 6, which is adding in annotations and pauses, and if needed to, adding in blurs. The next step is step 7, is adding an ending. Now, the thing about GIFs is it's hard for people to tell when they stop and when they begin because they keep looping over and over again. So I like to add something to the end that tells the viewer this is over and now it's restarting. My choice is to use the pixelation option. It's just what I kind of like the look of, and it's kind of become part of the way I always do it, so I stick with that. Anything you want to add to the end, a fade, anything like that, they're all in transitions. If you add it to the end, then it's clear this is the end. I don't add anything to the beginning because obviously in the loop it's going to come right after it, but you could also do this at the beginning. So I'm going to go to pixelation and drag it down and pop it in there. Now every now and then that happens. I don't know what's with this bug. Maybe it's just on my computer. It won't go in. So what I'll do is I'll click on the piece of media, I'll right click on pixelate, and I'll say add to selected media, and then it's there. I don't know why that hack works, but if it works, that's all that matters. The problem I have with that is then it also adds it to the beginning of that clip, that piece of media. So I'll come over here, select it, and delete it, and it takes it off of there. Okay, so now when we watch the end of the video, it pixelates away, and then it'll be clear that we're back to the beginning. Now, I also have some other stuff on my screen here, so I need to get rid of that. So I'll drag it to right when the pixelation starts. Let's watch the ending now. Looked good. So that was step 7, adding an ending, something that makes it clear that the GIF has ended and is about to restart. Okay, now step 8 is an optional one, and that's, do you want to add branding to your GIF? I'm fortunate that I started doing that pretty early on in making the GIFs that I make, because when a couple of my GIFs got really popular online and people started sharing them without tagging me, my name went with it anyhow because I had my branding in the bottom right corner, and people would tag me back and say, this was actually made by Jake Miller Tech, give them credit for it, because my branding was on there. So I recommend putting something, a text box, an annotation, a Bitmoji, something on your screen to make sure people know that it's yours. Don't have to do it. It's not necessary, especially if you're just using this like in your classroom or something, but it's a nice way to make sure people know that you were the creator of it. So I have in my library a corner logo that I use. I always take it starting from the beginning of the GIF, pop it right down here in the bottom corner, and I actually click up twice and left twice. That's just the position I like it in. And then I've got to make sure at the end that it ends where my GIF does. It doesn't, it goes by it, because that's how long this one was. So I'll just pull it over here to end at the same time. So let's see how that looks at the end there. Now, one thing I also have to watch for is that there's no points in my GIF where my branding covers something important. In this situation, I know it doesn't, but that's something I always go back through and just give it a quick watch to make sure that doesn't do it. So that was step 8, adding some branding if you feel like you need it. Now we're on step 9, which is our last and final step, and that is exporting our GIF. So to export our GIF, we go up to the top, we click on export, and we're going to select local file. That's the process to export a GIF. Okay? I'll click on local file. I'll go to my folder where I keep my GIFs. I'm going to call this one EduGIF, Ed Puzzle. I'm going to call it feedback. Okay, and now I'm going down here to export the animated GIF, and I can click export whenever I'm ready to. However, you want to be mindful of the file size that you end up with your GIFs, because they're going to play automatically, they're going to play in a loop, so we want them to be relatively low file sizes. Okay, so I'm going to click on options here next to it and make some selections in here. My preference is to have the frame rate automatic and the dimensions on project dimensions. Means the biggest possible width and height in terms of pixelation, and the fastest frame rate, meaning it's going to be the richest video. Now, if I do that and leave it like that, I'm going to end up with like a 50 megabyte file, which isn't really that big of a file. But when you think about people maybe getting it in an email, maybe seeing it on Twitter, maybe seeing it from their phone, maybe seeing it not on Wi-Fi, that might be a little bit big for them to load. Also, a lot of different locations cap the sizes of what you can add. Twitter, for example, last I looked, you're capped to 15 megabytes. So if it's bigger than 15 megabytes, you're not going to be able to tweet it, not as a GIF. Other places, like some tools that send GIFs or send tweets to Twitter, like other social media tools that maybe schedule tweets, cap actually to 5 megabytes. So you'll want to check where you're at. I use MailChimp for my newsletters, and last I checked, they cap to 10 megabytes. So I always go right under 10. That way I know it'll work in Twitter, and I know it'll work in MailChimp, and the quality's high enough for me. And so what I do is I reduce the frame rate a little bit. Let's try 15 first. I prefer to be higher, but I know that I'm going to need that. And then if I need to, I'll reduce the project dimensions. My goal is to keep both of them as high as I can. I try to sacrifice frame rate before dimensions. So let's click on it as 15 and project dimensions. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click export. We'll see what file size it is and then decide what we have to do with it afterwards. There's no way that I know of to dictate what file size I end up with. So it's just trial and error for me, and you can see it exports pretty quickly. So after this exports, if it's below 10, I'll go back in and make some changes and just save over top of that other file and replace it. Doesn't really take that long. My goal, just rule of thumb, is to keep my frame rate at above 6. I'll go as low as 6, but if I go lower than that, I feel like it's not going to be a very good video. And to keep my dimensions as high as possible, preferably above 50, but sometimes I go lower than that if I have to. Okay, export finished. Let's go ahead and check it out. Reveal it in Finder. Here it is, 28.4 megabytes. So it's about 3 times the size I need it to be. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to try again, export, local file. Go into the same folder, give it the same exact name, go to options. I'm going to change the frame rate to 10, and I'll make the project dimensions 50. Now, sometimes if I find out 50 goes a little bit over what I want, I'm going to go ahead and let that export. If I find out that 50, and I'm replacing it because I don't want that one. If I found that 50 goes a little bit over what I want, I'll go into the custom dimensions and make them even a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, because like my ideal is to get a 9.9 megabyte file. That means it's as rich as possible, but still going to work in those different locations I want it. Like if I get 8.4, like I'd rather get another megabyte and a half out of that GIF and make it a higher quality GIF when people look at it. So let's see what this one gives me. Reveal in Finder, 7.9. Okay, so that's a little bit lower than I'd like it to be. So sometimes I will right click on it and click Get Info and find out the dimensions. So look at this one here is 1,000 dimensions wide. So I'll go in and I'll go, let's try 1,100 and see what I get there. So let's go to File, Export, Local File. Make sure it's the same name so it saves right back over it. Options, go to Dimensions and click Custom and go 1,100. And the height will automatically adjust. Click OK, click Export, and see what I get. I could also just leave it as that 7.9 megabyte file if I want to. Okay. Once I'm all done, the last thing I normally do is right click on it and open it up in Chrome, or you could open it up in Safari or Internet Explorer, wherever you want to watch it and see that visually it looks good, the size of it's good, it's smooth, pretend you're the viewer and check it out. Otherwise, we just made a GIF, a screencast GIF, or as I call it, an edu GIF in Camtasia. If you have any questions on doing this, please use the comments below. If you make any GIFs of your own and you want to tell us about how it goes, use the comments below to do it. And don't forget, if you don't have access to Camtasia right now and you want access to Camtasia right now, you could use my affiliate code, which is on screen right now, jakemiller.net/TS. Happy GIF making. Please reach out if you have any questions.